Voy a ser mujeres y prefiero que mis perritos coman carne de esas mujeres a que ellas sigan. Y mientras yo sigo aquí en la tierra, voy a seguir haciendo todo el daño que yo pueda.
An incredibly unlikely couple. 22-year-old Pamela Martinez, who is a brothel worker, meets 17-year-old troubled teen Juan Carlos. Two troubled childhoods, a whirlwind romance, a hatred for men, a hatred for women, a desire for sex with women, and a need to leads to one of the worst couples you have ever heard about, with twists and turns that you never saw coming, ever, I promise you. Picture if Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer had children, those children grew up and began dating. Those children would be Juan and Patricia. Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It is so greatly appreciated. Truly, truly is. Before I get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really could use it and I really, really appreciate it. So, in the summer of 2003, 17-year-old Juan Carlos Hernandez found himself walking into a club. When he enters the club, he sees rows of women sitting at the bar, sizing up all the men that are walking in. That's where Juan meets Patricia. She pulls him onto the dance floor and she gets him to buy her a really expensive glass of cheap alcohol. After a little while on the dance floor, and Patricia knowing full well that her bosses are watching her and waiting for their cut, she takes Juan upstairs to a bedroom. In a shocking twist, though, Patricia doesn't treat Juan like any other customer. He was different to her. Patricia didn't end up even sleeping with Juan that night, but the two did make plans to meet up the following afternoon while Patricia was not on the clock. She makes these plans with Juan and she tells Juan that he needs to get out because she needs to go talk to her manager. Her manager comes to the door. She actually reaches into her drawer and pays her manager with her own money, pretending that it was given to her by Juan for the sex that she had just had with him, even though that never happened. During their date, the two realize that they're born on the same exact day, 6 years apart. Juan has always struggled to hold down conversations with people, but with Patricia, it came very easy for him. He ends up confiding in her that he was raised by his mother after his father walked out on them, going on to tell her that his mother wanted a little girl so badly that she would make him put on dresses sometimes while he was growing up. Mom was also a sex worker at the time, and she would typically do this on the nights that she was bringing home clients. She would not only make Juan dress up like a girl, but she would also make him watch her have sex with her clients. What? And listen, I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it again. I feel horrible for Juan, the child. And for Patricia, the child, because we're going to talk in a little bit about how she did not have a good childhood either. So, young Patricia, young Juan, I feel horrible for them. Adult Patricia and adult Juan, I have no use for them. They are horrible people. Horrible. When Patricia asks Juan why he allowed her to do that to him, he responds, "To make my mother happy because she always seemed sad." That's sad to me. It just is. It's sad to me. He also confided in her that he was SA'd as a child by a woman that was supposed to be babysitting him. He had never told this to anybody before, and Patricia was picking up on the fact that she was the one that he had decided to confide this very personal information. Patricia just looked at him, leaned in, and kissed him. Her body language assured Juan that his childhood did not change the way that she viewed him at all. And it was at this point that Juan decided that Patricia was his person. After the date was over, Juan walked Patricia back to the brothel with a pit in his stomach, and he left her there, knowing full well what she was going to do that night and every night thereafter. The two would actually meet up for several more dates after this. Eventually, they would decide to go to a hotel room and have sex for the very first time, sex that was described by both of them as awkward. With their past sexual trauma, meaningful sex was difficult for them. Another reason that it was awkward, many of Patricia's clients would pay her to beat them during sex. I don't know how else to say that nicer, YouTube, I'm sorry. Patricia began to realize that inflicting pain on these clients would help her in dealing with her deep, dark hatred for men. And eventually she would decide to come clean to Juan about her desires. When he pressed her to explain further, she told him that she fantasized about unaliving the men that she slept with for money. Juan would later confide in friends that Patricia was the best sex he had ever had. Patricia, who was born in 1980, had a difficult childhood as well. At the age of 6, she was R-worded by her cousin. She also claims that she has never felt loved as an adult and says that she would seek attention from the men that were clients of hers. She found herself a smitten kitten over Jose, told him that she expects him to have sex with her every single day, further telling him that if he missed a day, this is just, wait for it, ready? She would assume that he was cheating on her and therefore she would kill him. If you're ever questioning what a clear-cut, noble, 100% authentic, get the fuck out now red flag looked like, this would for sure be top 5. As the relationship grew stronger, the two would decide to move in together. They both agreed that it would be best for them to move to Mexico City, believing that because there's more opportunities for work there, they believed that honest work would equal an honest living, which normally it would. And for the majority of people, that's exactly what would have happened. But this is Juan and Patricia that we're talking about. So yeah, it doesn't happen like that. The two would find themselves living in the dirt-poor suburb of the city in a place named Ecatepec. I know I'm probably screwing that up. So before you come for me, I'm already telling you, I know I might be screwing that up. Patricia, who was super excited to finally be able to put her sex work behind her, told Juan that as soon as they get settled in, that she wants to start looking into opening up a business together. Prior to being with Patricia, Juan was never able to hold down a job. He dabbled in jobs that included a waiter, a garbage collector, and a salesman. And he also makes claims that he was in the mafia, which I don't personally believe, but maybe he's telling the truth. Over the next 7 years, Juan and Patricia would have 4 children together, open a business selling clothing, perfumes, and cell phones, live in a modest home, and seemed like a genuinely happy couple to family and friends. Then, as their business grew, the couple would realize that they needed more help. Patricia began to notice that Juan was only hiring attractive women that were significantly younger than both of them. And I'm sure that this bothered her, but it wasn't until one of the employees came to her and confided in her that Juan had attempted to sleep with her that shit hit the fan. Patricia would confront Juan about these accusations, thus kicking off the beginning of this couple's unaliving spree. When Patricia threatened to divorce Juan, he completely broke down and begged her for her forgiveness. He also decided at that moment to remind her that they've hardly had sex with each other since the birth of their youngest child. Why is he saying this? Well, in other words, he's insinuating that it shouldn't be a big shock to her if he did begin looking elsewhere. And then you would be incredibly wrong about that, because that should be a shock to her or anybody else. The one thing he never did, though, was dispute the allegations made by the employee. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. Patricia looked Juan in his eyes and demanded that he go out, find a girl that wanted to have sex, and to share his conquests with her. Juan, who's not exactly sure what Patricia means by this, but knows that he was going to do anything he needed to do in order to not lose the love of his life. So, after everything is said and done, Patricia would admit that the thought of her sharing another woman with Juan would turn her on. And I suppose that's a thing, and if it is, to each his own. I don't actually care what you do in your life. Seriously, I don't. To each his own. Not that those things don't bother me. It's not for me. Personally, I don't want that. But if you don't care and nobody's getting hurt, I don't care what you do. She went on to admit that she told Juan that certain things needed to happen with these women, otherwise she would forbid him from bringing any more of them home. Okay, so whatever you think certain things are, I promise you, promise you, it is so much worse than that. It's so bad. This is so bad. The main target for the couple, not surprisingly, were mostly young, vulnerable women, preferably sex workers, drug addicts, or teenage girls. Why? Well, that's easy because they're young, vulnerable, probably broke, and incredibly easy to manipulate. Their first victim would be in the summer of 2012. A young, beautiful 22-year-old went over to the couple's home to interview for a job in their warehouse. Patricia remembers that she was so tired that day after taking care of the kids. As the interview was about to begin, the kids start getting loud, so Patricia excused herself and goes outside with the kids to play. After Patricia goes outside, the woman asks Juan if she could use his bathroom. So he, of course, agrees, shows her to the bathroom, and even opens the door for her. What a gentleman, right? Wrong. After the woman walks in, Juan pushes her to the ground, goes into the bathroom with her, and locks the door behind him. He covers her mouth, rips off her clothing, and begins to R-word her. When Patricia begins to hear the woman's screams from inside the home, she moves the children to the front of the house in an attempt to muffle the screams. So we're not helping this girl. We're moving the children away from the screams so that they don't hear them. After Jose was done, the woman curled up in the corner of the bathroom with tears flooding out of her eyes, as you can imagine. Jose kneels down beside her and he punches her in the face until she loses consciousness. He then drags her over to the bathtub, places her inside of it, pulls out a knife, stabs her in the neck, and twists it until she is gone. He then cuts her up into pieces and places her into 3 separate garbage bags. He cleans up what he can and he calls Patricia and the children inside. Back inside the house, Jose brings the 3 bags into the kitchen and Patricia begins filling pots with water. This was all discussed prior to everything happening. So Patricia is well aware of the plan the entire time. In fact, it was Patricia that left the bags inside the bathroom for Jose. What the fuck? In one of the pots, Patricia's cooking beans. She places the beans into 4 plates, one for each of the children, and rushes them to finish eating dinner. Jose takes the children upstairs, gets them ready for bed, reads them a bedtime story, while Patricia is in the kitchen finishing up their dinner of human stew and bread to dip it in. Patricia would later claim that when she first realized what happened to the woman, she wanted to call the police, but Jose warned her that they would both go down for this. Okay, I don't personally believe this in the slightest. I'll tell you that right now. I don't. Nobody goes from being so incredibly disturbed, and not to mention your 4 babies are there, and you want to call the police, to filling up pots for human stew all within minutes. That's not quite how things happen, okay? I don't believe this whatsoever, not even a little bit. I don't care. I don't believe it, and I never will. Juan Carlos, on the other hand, would tell police that he was a demon that needed to drink human blood and eat human flesh at least every 3 months. He would later take the women's bones and sell them to a local Santeria priest so that he could use the bones for black magic. For context, a Santeria priest is a trained practitioner that leads rituals, sacrifices, and services. Patricia would later admit that after the first unaliving, she began to urge Jose to find more women to lure, unalive, and eat, saying that she liked when he did it and that it made both of them feel empowered. After the first unaliving, the couple began placing ads in local newspapers inquiring about a new housekeeper, knowing full well that most of the women who would respond would most likely be desperate for money and have a sense of comfort walking into the home once they saw another woman there, i.e. Patricia. All of the women that came to the home for an interview would be R-worded and then unalived by either Jose or Patricia. When they ran out of women answering their ad, they decided to target the teenage neighbor who had an addiction to sniffing glue. She would end up being the couple's 6th victim. Jose and Patricia asked her to come babysit the children so that they could have a romantic evening out together. Right before she's set to arrive, okay, Patricia takes the children into the backyard to get them out of sight from what's about to go down, because obviously she knows, and to keep an eye on the neighbors, but more importantly, on the teen girl's parents. After the girl arrived, Juan handcuffed the teen, gagged her, and dragged her into the bathroom. From there, he R-worded her, beheaded her, and dismembered her. Patricia would take the parts and she would make chili this time for her and Juan to enjoy after the children went to bed. Some more context. Every time that Juan unalived a victim, he would dismember the body, cut it into even smaller pieces, and slice the meat off the bone. This would allow him to present Patricia with at least 2 pounds of steak from each victim. The organs would be chopped up and they would be fed to the dogs. The dogs. Yep. Other parts would be placed into buckets and have wet cement poured over them. Because this town is so poor, it had an incredibly high crime rate, and it's especially dangerous for females. It is also the highest rate of femicide in the entire country. For context, femicide is defined as the intentional unaliving of women and girls. The reason that this is important is because after everything that this couple had done was exposed, thousands of people were furious with police for not taking these missing women reports seriously, as they should. I mean, these people have a right to be furious, because had they taken these claims more seriously, who knows how many lives could be saved. That's just what it is. It's just what it is. In fact, it was a group of mothers of missing girls that would be the ones to break this case wide freaking open.
El cuerpo de mi hija lo encuentran, nada más encuentran la parte superior del cuerpo. nuestras hijas, las con una hazaña.
Okay, but we're not there just yet because there's even more disgusting actions that we need to address. In 2015, they unalived an elderly neighbor of theirs. They invited this woman inside, got her drunk, R-worded her, unalived her, chopped her up, and made her into tamales. Parents of these missing victims would band together to figure out what the hell has happened to their children. They quickly realized that besides being from the same area, the one thing that all these women had in common was they all had Patricia's number in their cell phones. They all lived in the same neighborhood as Patricia, Juan, and the children, and that one of the missing women was their neighbor. They also discovered that one of the missing girls was just 13 years old. But even more disturbing than that was the fact that the whole family lived with the missing girl's family while their home was being renovated and before the girl went missing. So, okay, let me say it in simpler terms because that sounds really confusing. Juan, Patricia, and their kids lived with this 13-year-old girl's family and the 13-year-old girl while their home was getting renovated. After their home was done being renovated, Patricia and Juan and the kids moved back home. Then they invite the 13-year-old girl over. Then everything happens. When the mothers confront Patricia and Juan about their missing children, they very quickly say that they don't know what happened to them. Then they go on to blame a different neighbor for being responsible. Blame random innocent people just going about their day, minding their own fucking business. Just blame these random people. Yep, that's the way to do it. Police realize that they can no longer pretend that these were all just random instances, and they begin to launch surveillance on the couple's home. 3 days later, police show up to watch the home. Okay, here we go. This is just unbelievable. This is unreal, okay, this part. I think I had to read this part about 3 times because it's that, how do you fuck this up this badly? Because they got a late start on watching the home, they missed a woman and her 7-year-old daughter entering the home because they didn't know that she entered the home with her child. They also didn't know that she never, ever exited the home alive. Patricia and Juan would later say that they hadn't intended to unalive the child. But after being held captive for 7 days, Juan both of them to death. He also claimed that he never essayed the woman or her child. Do I believe him? Yes, I do. Only because he had no issue telling them everything. So what is two more to him? He does not care. He has no reason to not say it. That's why I truly believe him. September 2017, the couple would encounter their final 2 victims. A young woman named Naomi and her baby girl would enter the home, and the police would miss this entrance as well, even though they're still watching the home. After the death of Naomi, the couple would take the infant and sell her for 15,000 pesos or 760 US dollars to another couple who were running an illegal adoption agency. October 4th, 2017, police spot the couple out walking and see Patricia pushing a baby carriage. Even though police had no idea about the last 4 victims, they believed that their teen neighbor was being held captive inside that home. Meanwhile, that poor baby had been gone for a long time. But nevertheless, they finally decide to move in. More than 12 officers swarm the home and the couple. When they pulled the blanket off the carriage, they didn't find a baby. What they found instead was garbage bags When the officer looked closer, he found that inside one of the bags was a torso, and the couple are arrested. During the search of the couple's home, the things they found, they will most likely never ever recover from. They discover 8 large plastic buckets filled with concrete and human organs in the backyard. Inside the refrigerator, there's even more human remains wrapped in plastic. This isn't including the remains found all around the suburb, and of course, the parts that were consumed by the couple and their dogs, which obviously will never be recovered. DNA would come back to belonging to 8 different women. When they got Juan into an interrogation room, he sang like a canary and seemingly with little to no guilt for what he had done.
Que mis perritos coman carne de esas mujeres, a que ellas sigan respirando mi oxígeno. Y mientras yo siga aquí en la tierra, voy a seguir haciendo todo el daño que yo pueda. Y divirtiéndome de ese daño.
He likened his relationship with Patricia to that of the lions, where the female brings the male his prey. He told police about the 10 women that they unalived, then went on to admit about another 10 women, but claims he's unable to identify who they are, which makes perfect sense also because if you're just talking about random women answering an ad, how could you not believe that they have no idea who these people are? Also, they don't care who these people are. To them, they're not people. At that point, I feel like once you enter their house, you're not a person anymore. You are prey, and they're going to do to you what they've done to every other prey before you and every other prey after you. One prosecutor said at the time, he just seemed so proud to have done this. He wanted people to see his picture and to know his name. Juan and Patricia were set to stand trial for at least 8 of the victims, all separately. When trials were going on, and while graphic pictures and descriptions are being spoken about, the two could be seen laughing, giggling, and whispering in each other's ears. Disrespectful much? Between April and October of 2018, the couple stood trial several times on charges of femicide, hiding human remains, and human trafficking for the sale of Naomi's baby. Side note, the baby would thankfully be found safe and returned to her paternal grandmother. Both Juan and Patricia were each sentenced to 327 years behind bars. Is that enough? Not quite, but I guess it is. My hope, listen, you want to know the one thing that would probably make me feel a little bit better? Is knowing that Mexican jails are absolute horrors to be in. I don't know that. I'm assuming that, but I'm assuming that my assumption is correct. I hope it is. I hope they are tortured there every single day for the rest of their lives. All right, guys, if you're still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you so, so, so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet, and you feel so inclined to, because it really helps me out. I really appreciate it. Until next time, stay safe out there.